The alarm didn't sound until it was too late. Nari stood in front of the plasma conduit, her scanner showing readings that made no sense. The energy flow was stable 3 minutes ago. Now the numbers were climbing fast, too fast. Her crystalline skin reflected the orange warning lights as they began to flash across the maintenance bay. She was Kavalan, a species known across the galaxy for their brilliant minds and perfect memory. Her people could calculate quantum equations in their heads while other species needed computers. They were sought after as engineers, scientists, and mathematicians. Nari was one of their best, which was why she was here on Viridian Station at only 23 years old. The station was massive, a trading hub where dozens of alien species came to do business. Ships from every corner of known space docked here. The station needed the best engineers to keep everything running. Nari had been so proud when she was chosen for this assignment. Now she was staring at a conduit that was about to explode. Control. This is Bay 7, Nari spoke into her communicator. Her voice calm despite the fear growing in her chest. I have a critical situation. The plasma conduit is overloading, Static answered her. The radiation from the failing conduit was blocking her signal. Nari's mind raced through the options. She could run, but the explosion would damage half the station and kill dozens of people. She could try to manually shut down the conduit, but that meant getting close to it. Very close. Her hands moved before she finished thinking. This was what she was trained for. This was why her people were the best. She grabbed the emergency shutdown tool from the wall and approached the conduit. The heat hit her face like a physical force. Her crystalline skin could handle more heat than most species, but this was pushing her limits. The conduit glowed bright white now, humming with barely contained energy. Just need to reach the manual override, she whispered to herself, a habit she picked up from working with other species. Kavalan didn't talk to themselves normally, but she found it helped her focus. She extended her right hand toward the override panel. It was just next to the conduit, maybe 10 inches away from the superheated metal. Her fingers touched the panel. Just a few more seconds and she could trigger the emergency shutdown. The conduit exploded. Nari didn't remember the sound. Later people told her it was so loud that workers 3 levels away heard it. She didn't remember the light either. Though witnesses said it was like staring into a star, what she remembered was the pain. Her right hand was gone. Just gone. The explosion had severed it completely at the wrist. But worse than that, the blast had damaged her forearm. Her people's bodies were partially crystalline, especially their nervous system. The explosion had shattered the crystalline structures in her arm, leaving cracks that spread up to her elbow. She woke up 2 days later in the station's medical wing. A Kavalan doctor stood over her. His name was Ilman, and he had traveled from their homeworld when he heard about the accident. That's how serious it was. They had called a specialist from halfway across the galaxy. Can you feel this? Ilman touched her left hand. Yes, Nari said. Her throat was dry, and this? He touched her shoulder. Yes. He was quiet for a moment. Then he moved to her right side to the bandaged stump where her hand used to be. And this? Nari felt tears on her face, though Kavalan rarely cried. No, I don't feel anything. Ilman's expression told her everything before he spoke. The damage is extensive. The crystalline structures in your arm are shattered. Even if we could attach a prosthetic hand, we cannot connect it to your nervous system. Our people's biology is too complex. The way our nerves work. The way our crystalline structure transmits signals. We have no technology that can interface with it. There must be something, Nari said. Other species have prosthetics. I've seen them. Other species have organic nerves or mechanical nerves or energy-based neural pathways. Our crystalline resonance system is unique. We've tried for centuries to develop prosthetics for our people. None have ever worked properly. Ilman placed his hand on her shoulder. I'm sorry, Nari, you saved many lives today. You're a hero, but you will live the rest of your life without your dominant hand. The words hit her harder than the explosion had. She was an engineer. Her work required precision, 2 hands, the ability to manipulate small components and tools. Without her right hand, she couldn't do her job. Without her job, she was nothing. Kavalan society valued contribution, productivity, excellence. What would she contribute now? The next 2 weeks passed in a blur. Officials came to give her medals and thanks. Her family called from the homeworld, their voices full of pity. Worst of all, her supervisor visited to tell her that they were arranging transport home. They said it gently, kindly, but she understood. They were sending her away. Her career was over. Nari spent her days in her quarters staring at the wall. She had always been defined by what she could do, what she could build, what she could fix. Now she couldn't even tie her own shoes properly. On the third week, a human janitor came to clean her room. Nari had barely noticed humans before. They were common on the station, working the jobs that other species didn't want. This one was an older woman with gray hair. "Heard about what happened to you," the janitor said, emptying the trash. "Real sorry about that." Nari said nothing. The janitor kept talking anyway. "Humans did that. You know, there's a human down in the lower district. Runs a repair shop. They say he can fix anything. Fixed my daughter's hand terminal after 3 other shops said it was impossible. I don't need a hand terminal fixed," Nari said quietly. "No, but I heard him say once that impossible just means nobody tried hard enough yet." The janitor paused at the door. "Just thought you might want to know. Shop's called Taewon's Repairs, Bay 47 Lower Ring. Can't hurt to ask, right?" After she left, Nari sat in the silence of her room. She looked down at her right arm at the bandaged stump. The doctors had said it was impossible. Her own people, the smartest species in the galaxy, had said there was no solution. But she had 3 more days before the transport home arrived. 3 more days before she gave up completely. Maybe, she thought, impossible just meant nobody had tried hard enough yet. The next morning, Nari made her way to the lower ring to Bay 47, to a human repair shop run by someone named Taewon. She had nothing left to lose and maybe, just maybe, something left to find. The lower ring of Viridian Station smelled different than the upper levels. Up there, everything was clean and filtered. Down here, the air carried the scent of metal, oil, and a dozen different alien atmospheres mixing together. This was where the workers lived, where the real business of keeping the station running happened. Nari found Bay 47 tucked between a noodle shop and a parts dealer. The sign above the door was simple: Taewon's Repairs. Through the dirty window, she could see a cluttered workspace filled with tools and half-finished projects. She almost turned around. What was she doing here? A human mechanic couldn't solve a problem that Kivalan doctors couldn't fix. This was foolish, but her transport left in 3 days. After that, she would return home to a life of pity and uselessness. 3 days. She could spare 1 hour. Nari pushed open the door. Inside, the shop was chaos. Every surface was covered with something. Broken devices, tools she didn't recognize, parts from machines she couldn't identify. In the back, someone was working on what looked like a trillion engine core, sparks flying as they welded something. "Be with you in a minute," a voice called out. Male, speaking in standard trade language with a human accent. Nari waited. She watched as the human finished his welding, checked his work, then set down his tools. When he turned around, she got her first look at Taewon. He was maybe 30 years old, with dark hair and tired eyes. His clothes were covered in grease and burn marks. His hands were scarred, the kind of scars that came from years of working with dangerous equipment. But his face was kind when he smiled at her. "Welcome. What can I fix for you?" Then he noticed her missing hand and his expression changed to something more serious. "Sorry, what can I help you with?" Nari had prepared a speech on the way here. It all disappeared from her mind. "A janitor told me you could fix anything." She said, "You don't believe in impossible." Taewon wiped his hands on a rag. "I try not to." "What happened?" "Plasma conduit explosion. 3 weeks ago." Nari held up her right arm. "The doctors say there's no way to give me a prosthetic. My species' nervous system is too complex. The crystalline structure can't interface with any known prosthetic technology." She expected him to look uncomfortable, to make an excuse, to politely send her away. Instead, he stepped closer, genuinely interested. "May I?" he asked, gesturing to her arm. Nari nodded. Taewon examined the bandaged stump carefully. He didn't touch it, just looked. "Kavalan, right? I've read about your people. Your nervous system uses crystalline resonance instead of electrical or chemical signals. Beautiful design, really. Very efficient." "Beautiful design that nobody knows how to work with," Nari said bitterly. "Nobody's figured it out yet," Taewon corrected gently. He walked over to a terminal and started pulling up files. "I've done some work with Kavalan technology before. Repaired a navigation computer from one of your ships last year. Took me a month to understand how the crystalline processors worked, but once I did, it made perfect sense." Nari felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Not hope, not yet. But maybe curiosity. The computer is different from a body. True, but the principles might be similar. Taewon pulled up medical files, scanning through them quickly. Do you have your medical reports? The scans from after the accident? Yes, but they're confidential. I won't share them with anyone. I just need to understand what we're working with. Nari hesitated. Then she transferred the files from her personal device to his terminal. What did she have to lose? Taewon spent the next hour reading through everything. Nari sat on a workbench watching him. He made notes, pulled up reference materials, compared diagrams. Sometimes he muttered to himself in what sounded like Korean. Once he got up and grabbed an actual book from a shelf, flipping through pages of handwritten notes. Finally, he turned to her. Okay, I'm not going to lie to you. This is complicated. Your doctors are right that standard prosthetics won't work, but I don't think it's impossible. You don't think? Nari repeated. I don't know for sure, but here's what I do know. Taewon brought up a diagram of covalent nerve structure. Your people's nervous system works through resonance. The crystalline structures vibrate at specific frequencies to transmit signals. Every prosthetic technology we have is designed for species with electrical or chemical nerve signals. Nobody's built a prosthetic that works with resonance because nobody's tried to understand how your nerves actually function. My people have tried, Nari said. Have they? Or have they tried to make your nerves work with existing prosthetic technology? Taewon leaned against his workbench. I think we need to do it backwards. Instead of trying to make you fit the prosthetic, we build a prosthetic that fits you. Nari wanted to believe him. But hope was dangerous. How long would this take? I don't know. Weeks, months. I'd have to research, design, build, test. It would take time. I have 3 days before I'm sent home. Taewon was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled, and there was something stubborn in that smile. Then I better work fast. But Nari, I need you to understand something. I can't promise this will work. I can promise I'll try harder than anyone else would. I can promise I won't give up just because it's difficult. But I can't guarantee success. Why would you even try? Nari asked. You don't know me. This isn't your problem. No, it's not my problem. Taewon started pulling tools and materials from shelves. But it's a problem that shouldn't exist. You saved lives. You were good at your job. And now you're being thrown away because nobody wants to put in the effort to help you. That's not right. If I can fix it, I should try. There it was again. That word. Nari had been the best engineer in her class. She had solved problems that stumped her teachers. She had made things work that weren't supposed to work. But she had given up on herself so easily when others said it was impossible. This human, this mechanic who ran a cluttered shop in the lower ring, was willing to try when her own people had already quit. Okay, Nari said quietly. I'll work with you. 3 days. 3 days, Taewon agreed. He was already pulling up research files, making notes, sketching designs. I'm going to need you to explain some things about your biology. And I'm going to ask a lot of questions that might seem stupid. I'll answer whatever you need. Good. Taewon looked up at her, and his tired eyes were bright now. Let's do something impossible. Over the next 3 days, Taewon barely slept. Nari came to the shop every morning and found him already working. He had contacted specialists, read research papers, examined crystalline physics models. His shop became covered with diagrams and equations. And slowly, very slowly, he began to understand something that Kavalan doctors had missed. On the 3rd day, just hours before Nari's transport was scheduled to leave, Taewon looked up from his workbench with an expression Nari would never forget. I think I know how to do it, he said. Nari canceled her transport home. It wasn't easy. She had to file appeals, explain her decision to confused officials, and endure a difficult conversation with her family. Her mother had cried. Her father had been silent. They thought she was making a mistake, clinging to false hope. Maybe she was. But she had to know. Taewon's discovery was simple, which was why it was so brilliant. Kavalan doctors had spent years trying to create prosthetics that could generate the right crystalline resonance signals. They had failed because they were approaching it wrong. They were trying to make the prosthetic talk to the nerves. Taewon realized the prosthetic didn't need to talk. It needed to listen. Your nerves are already sending signals, he explained to Nari, showing her his diagrams. The crystalline structure in your arm is damaged, but it's still resonating. It's still trying to communicate. The problem is that there's nothing on the other end to receive those signals and turn them into movement. So you're saying the prosthetic needs to be a receiver, not a transmitter? Exactly. And not just any receiver. It needs to resonate at the same frequencies as your natural crystalline structure. Taewon pulled up a design on his screen. I'm thinking of a hybrid design. Crystalline resonance chambers here, connected to mechanical joints here, all controlled by a processor that interprets your nerve signals. Nari studied the design. It was elegant. It was also incredibly complex. This would require materials we might not have access to. I know. I've been making a list. Taewon showed her a long inventory of parts and materials. Some of this I can get on the station. Some of it, I'll have to call in favors. The next week became a blur of activity. Taewon worked his network of contacts across the station. He traded repairs for materials, called in old debts, and bargained with parts dealers in 3 different languages. Nari helped where she could, her knowledge of engineering proving useful in refining the design. She also started spending more time in the shop, not just for the prosthetic work. Taewon's repair business continued, and Nari found herself fascinated by how he worked. He had a way of looking at broken things that reminded her of how she used to approach problems. He didn't see failure. He saw puzzles waiting to be solved. Where did you learn all this? Nari asked one evening as Taewon repaired a trillion navigation system with parts from a completely different species technology. Military mostly, Taewon said, not looking up from his work. I was a combat engineer in humanity's early days in space. We didn't have the luxury of proper parts or manuals. You learned to improvise or people died. You were a soldier? For a while. 6 years. His hands paused for just a moment. Lost my whole unit in a bad situation. Enemy tech malfunction caused an explosion. I was the only one who made it out. Nari understood that pause, that slight hesitation. She recognized survivor's guilt when she saw it. I'm sorry. Me too. That's why I do this now. Taewon finished the repair and tested the navigation system. It powered on perfectly. I couldn't save them. But maybe I can save others by fixing what's broken. Over the following days, the prosthetic began to take shape. Taewon worked with a focus that bordered on obsession. He barely ate, rarely slept. Nari had to force him to take breaks. You'll make mistakes if you're too tired, she told him after finding him asleep at his workbench one morning. Can't afford mistakes. We only get one chance at this. Then you need to be sharp. Rest. It became a routine. Nari would arrive each morning with food from the noodle shop next door. They would eat together, discuss the day's work, then dive into the project. In the evenings, Nari would make Taewon stop working and they would talk about other things. She told him about Kavalan culture, their art and music and philosophy. He told her about Earth, about human history, about the stubborn refusal to accept limits that seemed to define his species. Humans sound exhausting, Nari said one evening, amused. We are, Taewon admitted, but that's kind of the point. We don't know when to quit, even when we probably should. Other aliens started noticing what was happening in Bay 47. Some were curious. Most were skeptical. A trillion doctor stopped by one day to tell Taewon he was giving Nari false hope and should stop before he hurt her more. Taewon politely thanked him for his concern and went back to work. But not everyone was against them. A human woman named Hyejin, who worked as an administrator in the station's medical department, started visiting the shop. She was interested in the project, asking questions and offering suggestions. It turned out she had been a medic in the same military unit Taewon served in, years before his time. I heard about what you're trying to do, Hyejin said. It's ambitious. Maybe crazy, but I like crazy. Any advice? Taewon asked. Yes, don't listen to the people who say it can't be done. They said humans couldn't survive in space. They said we couldn't compete with older species. They were wrong every time. Hyejin smiled. Also, if you need medical equipment or supplies, let me know. I might be able to help. Her assistance proved invaluable. She provided medical-grade materials that Taewon couldn't have obtained otherwise. She also started teaching him advanced integration techniques, things she had learned in combat medicine. The prosthetic grew more sophisticated with each passing day. Taewon crafted the crystalline resonance chambers with microscopic precision, filling them with a specialized fluid that would carry the resonance frequencies. He built the mechanical joints using lightweight alloys, each one tested and calibrated perfectly. The neural mesh that would interface with Nari's arm was a work of art, thin as paper but strong as steel. But nothing went smoothly. The first resonance chamber cracked during testing. Taewon spent 2 days making a new one with better materials. The mechanical joints locked up when exposed to the resonance frequencies. Taewon had to redesign the entire joint system with different materials that wouldn't interfere with the crystalline resonance. The neural mesh didn't make proper contact with Nari's damaged arm. Taewon had to study her specific injury pattern and customize the mesh to fit her exactly. Each setback hurt. Each failure felt like proof that the doctors had been right, that this was impossible. But Taewon kept working. Every time something failed, he learned from it. Every problem revealed a solution to the next problem. And slowly, piece by piece, the prosthetic came together. 4 weeks after Nari first walked into his shop, Taewon held the completed prosthetic in his hands. It was beautiful. A perfect blend of crystalline chambers, mechanical precision, and neural interface technology. It looked alien and human at the same time, a bridge between two different approaches to engineering. "It's ready," Taewon said quietly. Nari looked at the prosthetic, then at Taewon. His eyes were red from lack of sleep. His hands trembled slightly from exhaustion. He had put everything he had into this project, this attempt to do something impossible. "Are you sure?" she asked. Taewon met her eyes. "No, but I'm as sure as I'll ever be. The question is, are you ready?" Nari looked at her right arm, at the stump where her hand used to be. She thought about her life before the accident, the confidence she used to have. She thought about the past month watching a human mechanic refuse to give up on her when her own people had. "Yes," she said, "I'm ready." "Then let's do this." Taewon carefully packed the prosthetic. "Hyejin has arranged for us to use a medical bay tomorrow morning. We'll do the integration surgery there." That night, Nari couldn't sleep. Tomorrow would determine everything. Either the prosthetic would work and her life would begin again, or it would fail, and she would have to accept that some things truly were impossible. She spent the night looking at the stars through her window, wondering which future was waiting for her. The medical bay was cold and sterile, completely different from the warm chaos of Taewon's shop. Nari sat on the surgical table watching Taewon and Hyejin prepare the equipment. Her heart was beating fast, a steady rhythm that matched the beeping of the monitors. "Nervous?" Hyejin asked, checking Nari's vital signs. "Terrified," Nari admitted. "Good. That means you understand what we're about to do." Hyejin smiled kindly. "But you're in good hands. I've seen Taewon work miracles before." Taewon was laying out his tools with careful precision. The prosthetic hand sat in its case, crystalline chambers catching the light and throwing rainbow patterns across the walls. He looked calm, but Nari noticed his hands shaking slightly as he worked. "Taewon," Nari said. "If this doesn't work, don't," he interrupted gently. "Don't plan for failure. We plan for success and deal with problems as they come. That's how you survive." Hyejin administered the anesthetic, something specially formulated for covalent physiology. "This will keep you conscious, but you won't feel pain. We need you awake to tell us what you're sensing during the integration." Nari nodded, already feeling the medication taking effect. Her body felt distant, like she was floating. The surgery took 6 hours. Taewon worked with steady hands, connecting the prosthetic to Nari's damaged arm with microscopic precision. The neural mesh had to align perfectly with her remaining crystalline nerve structure. Each connection point was critical. One mistake could ruin everything. Hyejin assisted, her military medic training evident in how smoothly she worked with Taewon. They moved together like they had done this 100 times before, even though this was completely new territory. "How are you feeling?" Taewon asked during the connection process. "Strange," Nari said. Her voice sounded far away even to herself. "I can feel something, not pain. More like pressure? Or maybe vibration?" "That's good. That's very good. It means your nerves are detecting the prosthetic." Taewon made a micro-adjustment. "Now? Stronger." "The vibration is stronger." Hyejin monitored the equipment. "Neural activity is increasing. The resonance is synchronizing." Hours passed. Taewon connected each crystalline chamber, tested each mechanical joint, verified every neural pathway. The prosthetic slowly became part of Nari's body, metal and crystal joining with flesh and bone. Finally, Taewon stepped back. "That's it. That's all I can do. Now we wait." "Wait for what?" Nari asked. "For your body to accept it. For the resonance to fully synchronize. For the integration to complete." Taewon looked exhausted. "Could take hours. Could take days. Your body needs time to recognize the prosthetic as part of you." They moved Nari to a recovery room. The anesthetic wore off slowly, and she could feel her new hand now. It was strange. Not quite right. The sensations were dull and disconnected, like trying to feel something through thick gloves. Taewon stayed with her, monitoring the integration readings. Heejin brought food and made sure he ate. Other people started arriving, curious about what had happened. Word had spread through the station that the impossible surgery had been completed. The first night was difficult. Nari could feel the prosthetic, but she couldn't control it. Her fingers wouldn't move when she tried to move them. The hand felt heavy and foreign. "It's not working," she said quietly, trying not to cry. "It's only been 12 hours, Taewon said, though she could see the worry in his eyes. "Give it time. Your nervous system needs to learn how to communicate with the prosthetic. It's like learning a new language." The second day brought small changes. Nari could feel more distinct sensations now. She could tell when someone touched different parts of the prosthetic hand. The feelings were still dull, still wrong, but they were there. On the third day, her index finger twitched. It was tiny, barely noticeable. But Nari felt it happen. She had thought about moving her finger, and it had moved. Just a little. Just a twitch. But it had moved. "Taewon," she whispered. It moved. He was at her side instantly, watching. "Try again. Try to move it again." Nari concentrated. She thought about her finger, about moving it up. The finger twitched again, stronger this time. Taewon's face broke into a huge smile. "It's working. It's actually working." Over the next week, the integration deepened. Nari slowly gained control of her new hand. First one finger, then two, then three. The movements were clumsy at first, like a child learning to use their hands for the first time. But every day brought improvement. By the end of the second week, Nari could move all her fingers independently. She could make a fist. She could pick up objects, though her grip strength was still weak and her fine motor control was poor. "This is incredible," Heejin said, examining the neural readings. "The integration is happening faster than we predicted. Your body is adapting to the prosthetic better than expected." People started coming to see the miracle. Other Kavalan on the station heard about what happened and came to witness it themselves. They were shocked. Some were skeptical, thinking it must be a trick. But when they examined the prosthetic and saw Nari use it, they had to believe. A Kavalan doctor named Minho arrived from a nearby colony. He was a specialist in Kavalan neural prosthetics, someone who had spent his career trying to solve this exact problem. "I need to understand how this works," Minho said, examining the prosthetic with professional fascination. "We've been trying to solve this problem for 200 years. How did you do it in a month?" Taewon explained his approach, showing the designs and explaining the resonance principles. Minho listened intently, asking questions, taking notes. "It's so simple," Minho said finally, and he sounded almost angry. "The solution was so simple. We were so focused on making the prosthetic generate signals that we never considered just making it receive them. How did we miss this?" "Sometimes you're too close to a problem to see the obvious answer," Taewon said. "I had the advantage of knowing nothing about Kavalan prosthetics. I started from scratch. No assumptions, no preconceived ideas about how it should work." Minho looked at Nari, watched her slowly flex her prosthetic fingers. "Do you know what this means? There are thousands of Kavalan across our empire who have suffered similar injuries. We told them all that nothing could be done. But now there's hope." Nari finished quietly. The news spread beyond the station. Within days, Taewon received messages from Kavalan medical facilities across known space. They wanted to learn his techniques. They wanted to help their own people. But more importantly, other species started reaching out too. Aliens with their own impossible medical problems. Situations where their biology didn't match existing prosthetic technology. They had all been told nothing could be done. Now they wondered if a human mechanic might find a solution. 3 weeks after the surgery, Nari stood in Taewon's shop, her prosthetic hand holding a delicate calibration tool. She was helping him repair a quantum drive, work that required precision and skill. Her new hand wasn't perfect. The sensations were still slightly off. Her grip strength wasn't quite what it used to be. But she could work. She could engineer. She could be herself again. "Thank you," she said to Taewon. "You gave me my life back." Taewon smiled, tired but happy. "You're welcome. But you should know you gave me something too." "What?" "Purpose. A reason to keep doing this." He gestured at his shop at the broken things waiting to be fixed. Every time I fix something, I prove that impossible is just a word. And maybe that's worth something. Outside the shop, a new patient was arriving. Another impossible case. Another chance to prove that with enough stubbornness and care, anything could be fixed. 6 months after the surgery, a delegation from the Kivalin homeworld arrived at Viridian Station. Nari stood in Taewon's shop when the message came through. She was adjusting a client's navigation computer, her prosthetic hand moving with nearly the same precision as her natural one. The integration had continued to improve over time, and now she barely noticed the difference. "They want to see us both," she told Taewon after reading the message. The High Council sent representatives. Taewon looked up from the engine he was rebuilding. "That sounds official. Should I be worried?" "I don't know. The Kivalin government doesn't usually send delegations unless it's important." The delegation arrived the next day, 5 Kivalin officials in formal robes, led by a woman named Yoonji who served on the High Council's medical board. They came to the shop, which seemed strange. Nari had expected to be summoned to some official meeting room. "We wanted to see where it happened," Yoonji explained, looking around at the cluttered workshop, where the impossible became possible. Taewon wiped his hands on a rag, looking uncomfortable with the attention. "It's just a repair shop." "No," Yoonji said firmly. "It's much more than that." She turned to Nari. "We owe you an apology. When you were injured, we failed you. We told you nothing could be done because we had stopped trying. We had accepted our limitations instead of challenging them." "You didn't know," Nari began. "We should have known. We should have tried harder." Yoonji looked at Taewon. "And we should have listened when others offered to help. We have always prided ourselves on being the smartest species in the galaxy. But intelligence means nothing without the wisdom to recognize when you need help, and the humility to accept it." One of the other officials stepped forward, holding a data pad. "We've spent the last 6 months studying your work, Taewon. With your permission, we've shared your techniques with our medical facilities. So far, we've successfully provided prosthetics to 47 Kivalin who were living with similar injuries." Taewon looked stunned. 47? And more every day? "We've established training programs to teach our doctors your methods. But we're here with a proposal." Yoonji gestured to Nari and Taewon both. "We want you to come to our homeworld. Both of you. We want you to teach at our most prestigious medical academy. We want you to help us not just with prosthetics, but with changing how we think about impossible problems." Nari felt her heart racing. The Kivalin homeworld. The medical academy. It was one of the most honored institutions in the galaxy. Taewon was quiet for a long moment. That's incredibly generous. But I'm not a teacher. I'm just a mechanic." "You're a mechanic who solved a problem that our best doctors couldn't solve," another official said. "You're exactly what we need." "I'll need time to think about it," Taewon said carefully. "Of course. The offer stands whenever you're ready." After the delegation left, Taewon and Nari sat in silence for a while. "You should go," Nari finally said. "This is an incredible opportunity. I don't know. This shop, this station, it's my home. You could help thousands of people. Maybe more. I help people here too." Nari understood his hesitation. Taewon had built a life here in this shop, fixing impossible things one at a time. It was simple. It was safe. Going to the Kivalin homeworld would change everything, but before they could discuss it further, Hyejin rushed into the shop. "Turn on the news," she said breathlessly. "Any channel." Taewon pulled up a news feed on his terminal. The headline made Nari's breath catch. "Human innovation revolutionizes prosthetic medicine across the galaxy." The news report showed images of Nari's prosthetic, interviews with Kivalin patients who had received similar prosthetics, and detailed explanations of Taewon's techniques. But it went further than that. The report explained how Taewon's approach, understanding alien biology from first principles instead of trying to adapt existing technology, was being applied to other species as, well, a trillion engineer with a damaged sensory organ, a reptilian pilot with a spinal injury, a crystalline species with broken communication nodes. All of them had been told nothing could be done. Now, inspired by what Taewon had done for Nari, specialists from different species were working together, sharing knowledge, finding solutions. "This is bigger than we thought," Hyejin said quietly. Over the following weeks, the shop became busier than ever. Patients arrived from across the station, then from across the sector. Not all of them had medical problems. Some brought broken equipment that other shops had declared unfixable. Some came just to meet the human who refused to accept impossible. Taewon tried to help everyone, but there weren't enough hours in the day. He was exhausted, overwhelmed, and starting to realize that one person in one shop couldn't meet the demand. "You need help," Nari told him one evening after they sent the last patient away with an appointment scheduled for 2 months later. "I know, but I can't just train someone in a few weeks. This work requires people who care enough to try, people who refuse to give up." Nari pulled up a list on her tablet. "There are 17 mechanics and engineers on this station who have reached out asking to learn from you. Hyejin has connections with 5 former military medics who want to help, and I've been contacted by 12 Kavalan engineers who want to volunteer their time." Taewon stared at the list. "That's a lot of people, because you inspired them. You showed everyone that impossible is just a challenge, not a wall." Slowly, things began to change. Taewon's small repair shop expanded. Other engineers joined him, learning his techniques and developing their own. Hyejin coordinated with the medical facilities on the station to provide proper support. Kavalan experts arrived to teach alien biology to human engineers, while human engineers taught Kavalan doctors to think outside traditional boundaries. Within a year, what had started as one human's stubborn refusal to quit had grown into a movement. The Galactic Medical Council, which had once dismissed human medicine as primitive, sent official observers to study the work being done on Viridian Station. Other stations began establishing similar programs. Nari continued working alongside Taewon, but her role had evolved. She had become a bridge between species, helping aliens understand human innovation while helping humans understand alien physiology. She still used her prosthetic hand every day, and it still worked perfectly. It had become part of her, so natural that she sometimes forgot it wasn't the hand she was born with. 2 years after the accident that took her hand, Nari stood in the expanded workshop with Taewon, watching a young human engineer successfully complete his first prosthetic integration on a trillion patient. The patient's damaged sensory organ was being replaced with a hybrid device that nobody had thought possible 2 years ago. "We did this," Nari said quietly to Taewon. "We changed everything." "No," Taewon corrected gently. "We started it. But look at them." He gestured to the workshop full of engineers and doctors from a dozen species all working together. "They're the ones changing everything. We just showed them it was possible." A new patient arrived, a species Nari didn't recognize with a medical condition she'd never seen before. The patient looked scared and hopeless, probably because they'd been told nothing could be done. Taewon walked over to greet them, and Nari heard him say the words that had become his trademark. "Tell me about your problem. Let's see if we can fix it," Nari smiled. She looked at her prosthetic hand, flexing the fingers that had been forged from human stubbornness and cross-species cooperation. It wasn't just a hand anymore. It was a symbol of what different species could accomplish when they refused to accept each other's limitations. The galaxy was a big place, full of problems that seemed impossible. But Nari had learned something important in Taewon's cluttered shop on Viridian Station. Impossible just meant nobody had tried hard enough yet. And as long as there were people willing to try, to learn, to refuse to give up, then nothing was truly impossible. The stars held countless broken things waiting to be fixed. But now, finally, there were people ready to fix them.